There is a second part of this Hopi prophecy with the coming of a red star. The Maya and the Hopi will not discuss this with me, though I know there's been written about in books, but I'm not going to talk about that. But I feel confident that they will in the future. Now, when Don Alejandro was in Sedona, Arizona in July of 2007, he gave part of the Mayan prophecy, one item. And there are many, many more. And he said that, what he said, and this is Mayan prophecy, definitely. He said that there would be a physical pole shift of the Earth's axis sometime within the end of time. Now, this is nothing new. Since Edgar Cayce gave this same prophecy long ago in the 1930s or so, perhaps I should simply say that they agree. And Cayce said that sometime after the winter of 1998, the axis of the Earth would shift to a new location, and he even gave the exact location of where he predicted the axis would move to a very specific point inside of Russia, approximately 16 degrees from where it is now. Considering that Edgar Cayce gave about 12,000 predictions from 1920s to 1970 and was only wrong on one small prediction, he gave a reading while he was in the United States on a man in France and reached his twin brother by mistake. Edgar Cayce's predictions are among the most accurate in the world. And modern science has been intensely watching this possibility of a pole shift. A physical pole shift always begins with a magnetic pole shift first. And science has noted that the magnetic field of the Earth has begun to weaken about 2,000 years ago. And then about 500 years ago, there was a dramatic shift in the strength of the magnetic field as it became weaker and weaker. Then about 40 years ago or so, the magnetic field began to change in ways where the magnetic lines that had been more or less fixed for a long, long time began to wander. This resulted in the whales that used these lines to migrate began to beach themselves on land, something we'd never seen before. The magnetic lines changed from their established positions, and some of them now entered into land masses which never had before. No one had ever seen whales this before, and no one had ever seen the magnetic lines change like this before either. Then the birds began to show up in locations that were not part of their migration patterns, again, because the Earth's magnetic lines were changing. And they were changing because the Earth's magnetic field was getting weaker and weaker. In the 1990s, the astronomical maps of the world, the aeronautical maps of the world used for landing airplanes at the airports had to be changed worldwide because of the old ones were simply not valid anymore. In 2003, a television special came out of Nova, which gave a team of scientists the airtime to begin to talk about the possibility of a magnetic pole shift. These scientists felt the Earth's magnetic poles will shift sometime in the near future and that it was imminent. And then a little less than 2 years ago, the world scientists who observed the Earth's magnetic fields went onto the internet to warn the world. They were given 11 days before the government shut them down and wouldn't let them keep talking, probably because they were afraid that people would be too concerned. What the scientists said was that there were so many anomalies in the Earth's magnetic field that they believed that within 25 years the magnetic fields of the Earth would not only move, but would switch its polarity, meaning that the North Pole would become the South Pole and the opposite. Then about 8 or 9 months ago, these same scientists went back on the internet and made an even stronger warning. They said that the anomalies had become so great that they were expecting the possibility of a magnetic pole shift any minute. What science knows as fact is that about 13,000 years ago, there was a physical pole shift. The pole shift coincided with the other end of where we are right now in the precession of the equinoxes, which would be about 13,000 years ago, exactly on the opposite end of this cycle from where we are right now. They believe that Hudson Bay was the site of the North Pole before this axis shifted. Then a little less than 26,000 years ago, at exactly the very point we happen to be within at this moment in the precession of the equinoxes, the end of time, where we are right now, close to December 21st, 2012, the Earth's physical poles shifted a second time. And if that is not shocking enough, what science knows is that when the Earth's physical axis shifts to a new location, it only takes 20 hours, less than one day. This is not the Mayans saying this. This is the scientific world has documented this. You wake up one morning, and in a single day, your world is completely transformed. But back to the magnetic poles. What science has also noticed is that directly before the Earth's physical pole shift, there is always a magnetic pole shift, followed by a period of no magnetic fields. It is shut down completely. What is now only a theory, because a modern man has never been alive modern man anyway, has never witnessed this kind of thing. But this theory is the only theory that comes to really explain how this is possible. If you think about it, the Earth is massive, and that to change the axis of the Earth would require a huge amount of energy. And that's almost impossible. Scientists have never been able to figure this out, of how this is possible. The amount of energy would be just, it would be like the moon hitting the Earth, something of this kind of level. And then, so how can the Earth possibly move its axis somewhere? The amount of energy that would take is just stupendous. It would be as though a moon had hit the Earth, or something of that nature would take place. But it doesn't. The Earth has shifted its axis hundreds and hundreds of times over the last few 100 million years. And so science could never figure this out. They didn't know how this was possible. And then a theory came up recently, not very long ago, 20, 30 years ago, I believe. And the theory was this. There is a crust on the Earth. It's only 20, 30, 40 miles thick. It's not very thick. And underneath that is called the mantle. And there is an upper mantle, which is that connects the crust to the inner part of the Earth. And this upper mantle is made out of rock. However, what the scientists have discovered is that if the magnetic field of the Earth goes to zero, disappears completely, which is what they expect to happen very soon, then after about 2 weeks, this rock formation that is all around the Earth turns to a liquid. It's like oil. And so now the outer crust of the Earth is completely free to spin in any direction it wants. And so it would still take a great amount of energy to move that, but nothing like it would require to move the entire Earth to a new axis. And so, how do I say this? What they believe is going to happen is you now go to the South Pole, and the ice on the South Pole is not perfectly centered. It's off-center. It's a massive amount of ice, miles, about 2.5 miles high or so. It's a huge amount of ice. In fact, if that ice were to melt, it would raise the oceans, the entire world's oceans, I believe, close to 200 feet. It's a lot of water. And so that mass, when the surface of the Earth, the crust of the Earth, is now free to rotate, it's off-center. And they believe it will move toward the center of balance, and when it does, the crust moves with it. So the world scientists have now calculated where they believe, they have predicted where they believe the axis of the Earth is going to go, which is almost identical to Edgar Cayce. Interesting enough. Edgar Cayce says it'll be 16 degrees into Russia in this particular place, and the mathematical scientists have calculated about 17 degrees into Russia, into almost exactly the same place. And so if it's true, we don't know, but this is a theory. Nobody has ever seen this happen. At least no modern man has.